Well, now, so you noticed. Hey, everybody. Hello and welcome into the brand new year. How's everyone's day been so far? Or I guess I should be able to say, hey, how's everyone's year so far? Oh, man. I feel like something's off. I feel uncentered. Fine so far? That's good to hear. I'm not gonna lie. I spent a lot of today in bed. I did get up. I went shopping, which I have thoughts about that, but whatever. Washed my car, wanted to get gas, but unfortunately, there were a lot of people. So, that's just something that I'll save for tomorrow. Or even maybe later. But yeah, 2025 so far has been full of many, many thoughts. Shopping? Yeah. So, I did mention it yesterday, but my family does have a tradition in which we eat 12 grapes, one wish, one for each month, and then crack an egg. Now, we did happen to have 3 eggs left for each of us. However, those were the last ones we had left. And sometimes we do it twice. One for the energy of 2024 that we're bringing with us. It wasn't good, by the way. And one for more positive once 2025 itself had started. The results are more positive. But there are also still some issues. But that's to be expected. Life was never meant to be such a cakewalk. But, even so, we'll try to make it as sweet as possible, as a cakewalk should eventually lead to a cake. Yeah, but it turns out that, as I mentioned with shopping, there were still some stores that opened after after the New Year's celebration itself. And so, like, I'm grateful because I was able to buy that carton of eggs and some milk. Oh man, the price of eggs. How rough. But, got that done. You know, it's I paid like 7 something for the carton of eggs, which is quite painful. Well, Core, I have a question for you. Are you ready to learn with me? Since, you know, might as well do something nice and fun and educational. You sound so hesitant. Here, let me make some space. Don't mind me getting closer. Hi. Because gang, you don't know what's gonna happen? Well, as it turns out, behold, I'm starting up Duolingo. Yeah, so just figured we can do a few lessons at the start. And yeah. However, I do have to say, the audio itself is untested. I don't know if it's going to be loud or not. Yeah, you saw that in general chat? So yeah, we can do that. Maybe throw in a few puzzles. Just stuff to... I don't know. It seems fun. Lasses. Lesson 2 of 4. Ah. We have Kudasai. Up. Let's... I think that could be actually a bit louder. Mizu. Ocha. Sushi. Gohan. Sushi kudasai. Ocha. Ni. Zu.
Sushi to gohan.
Ah. Sushi and rice. My hard work is paying off. So, ocha to mizu. My Japanese arc. I mean, we've got the location behind me, to be fair. Ocha. Sushi. Mizu. Gohan. Kudasai. Ocha. Gohan to sushi. You know, it'll be funny. Probably after getting far in Japanese, should probably learn some Indonesian. Zu to sushi. Mizu kudasai. Which one of these is water? Mizu. Write this in Japanese. Gohan. That'd be cool? Yeah. Any particular reason why? Well, as it turns out, according to my YouTube analytics, a good number of people that check out the channel are from Indonesia. So, I thought that'd be nice. Be able to actually understand the Silamapagi. We love YouTube inclusivity in this channel. Yeah, we sure do, Jinx. Happy New Year. Yeah, no, but that is the second highest. The second highest people that come on in. More guys are showing up too. It used to be an actual 75-25% split between 25% guys and 75% girls, and now, yeah. Anyways, water and rice, please. My analytics were very interesting to check out. Gohan, sushi, that's kind of easy. Mizu, kudasai, ocha. Gohan. Green tea and water. Ocha. Sushi. Mizu. Kudasai. Gohan. And that's a lesson done. Yay! I want you to draw whatever makes you happy. Can I make it to a 2-day streak? Well, only if you guys join me. What's up? Goodbye, Duolingo. Place myself back here. Hello. I feel out of center again. I know. I am unsure and can get back to you on that. Official artist of... So, now that we've had some fun and learned a bit, I think it's probably time to start reading, don't you? Yes, yes I do. You know what I need to find out, though? Is how to fix the YouTube chat itself. Because, if you look this way, at the unseemly line, it's mean. Let's see, what book am I reading today? Well, I was thinking of continuing The Pawn of Prophecy, as we are on chapter 11. However, it is also a new year. Brand new day, even. So what if I read a visual novel? You think the line stays there? It does. I can move it, though. I can get rid of it. For now. It's just something about the formatting of it. I'll fix it someday. So, I place the choice in both your hands. Continue with the first book of my favorite series, or start a fun first-person visual novel called Campfire Cooking. Visual novel? Well, that's one vote from Core. What do you think, Jinx? Visual novels are fun. The language is sometimes a little weird sometimes, but I just said sometimes twice. That means I'm also weird. We can do that. Let's see. I think I should continue the book I was reading, but the new visual novel in the new year sounds good. Yeah. And there's nothing to say that I can't do both. Especially since reading a chapter usually takes about an hour, sometimes more, sometimes less, and then we can read some of the visual novel and then try to finish the Odyssey. Oh, it's so rough to read. So, I think that will be the plan for today. One last question before I begin, though. Tell me, what have you guys eaten today? For your first meals of 2025. I hope it was tasty. Monster energy. You just ate dinner, salmon and rice? Nice. I don't know if I can constitute that as food per se, but I hope you had some water to go with it. I have to be very, very careful when it comes to energy drinks. I don't know if I should admit this, but I do have a lot of anxiety, and sometimes the energy drink can push that over the edge. So I usually have to wash it down with a lot of water, just to make sure I don't go crazy. I don't think air is food either, Jinx. That's alright though. Hopefully you get something soon. If you can. If not, well, starting the year off with a fast also isn't a bad idea. I probably should have. Nothing wrong with admitting that anxiety is somewhat of a universal thing. That is true. Unfortunately. What can you do? But keep on keeping on. And now, let's go ahead and kick back, relax, forget about the world outside, as my words will take you once again to a world of fantasy. one where magic and dragons exist. Back to The Pawn of Prophecy, Chapter 11. They were 9 days on the coast road from Kamar to the capital at Sendar, though it was only 55 leagues. Captain Brendig measured their pace carefully, and his detachment of soldiers was arranged in such fashion that even the thought of escape was impossible. Although it had stopped snowing, the road was still difficult, and the wind which blew in off the sea and across the broad, snow-covered salt marshes was raw and chill. They stayed each night in the evenly spaced Sendarian hotels, which stood like mileposts along that uninhabited stretch of coast. The hostels were not quite so well appointed as were their Tolnitran counterparts along the Great North Road, but they were at least adequate. Captain Brendig seemed solicitous about their comfort, but he also posted guards each night. Is there any reason why you're not eating, Jinx? If you can sate my curiosity. On the evening of the second day, Garion sat near the fire with Dernick, staring moodily into the flames. Dernick was his oldest friend, and Garion felt a desperate need for friendship just then. Dernick, he said finally. Yes, lad? Have you ever been in a dungeon? What could I have done to be put in a dungeon? I thought that you might have seen one sometime. Honest folk don't go near such places, Dernick said. I've heard they're awful, dark and cold and full of rats. You just forget to eat, and then you have a food sensitivity mixed with a hatred of cooking. You're just simply too lazy. Well, I can definitely understand that. Although I have learned to appreciate and enjoy cooking myself. What if I read some nice, simple recipes to get you nice and possibly inspired to cook something nice and easy? Something that doesn't really feel like cooking. I have too many cookbooks next to me. Ramen noodles, I mean, those are always a nice solid choice in a pinch. Plus, as my good friend Gladiolus would say, cup noodles are the ultimate canvas. You can enhance that cup of noodles with anything. You don't want to, that require having to do the dishes afterwards. Oh, such a boon. And I feel like cup noodles would probably be your best bet with some nice disposable tableware. You could even get those new microwavable cups. That way, you put the water, put it in the microwave, and then heat up, because it's good for you. I've heard they're awful, dark and cold and full of rats. What's all this talk about dungeons? Dernick asked. I'm afraid we may find out all about places like that very soon, Garion said, trying not to sound too frightened. We've done nothing wrong, Dernick said. Then why would the king have a siege like this? Kings don't do things like that without good reason. We haven't done anything wrong, Dernick repeated stubbornly. But maybe Mr. Wolf has, Garion suggested. The king wouldn't send all these soldiers after him without some reason. And we could all be thrown into the dungeon with him just because we happen to be his companions. Things like that don't happen in Sandaria, Vernick said firmly. Then you'll have to put your writing on pause and move to the kitchen. While that is true, at the same time, if you're not fully under a muse, inspired to write at this current time, then sometimes a little break and refresher is just the thing to get back into the spirit of writing. Plus, people tend to work better when their stomach's not complaining. The next day, the wind was very strong as it blew in off the sea, but it was a warm wind, and the foot-deep snow on the road began to turn slushy. By midday, it had started to rain. They rode in sodden misery toward the next hostel. Your stomach isn't complaining, it's full of monster energy. Alright. Fair enough. I'm afraid we'll have to delay our journey until this blows out, Captain Brendick said that evening, looking out one of the tiny windows of the hostel. The road's going to be quite impassable by morning. They spent the next day and the next sitting in the cramped main room of the hostel, listening to the wind-driven rain slashing at the walls and roof, all the while under the watchful eyes of Brendig and his soldiers. Silk, Garion said on the second day, moving over to the bench where the rat-faced little man sat dozing. Yes, Garion? Silk asked, rousing himself. What kind of man is the king? Which king? Of Sandaria. A foolish man, like all kings, Silk laughed. The Sandarian kings are perhaps a bit more foolish, but that's only natural. Why do you ask? Well, Garion hesitated. Let's suppose that somebody did something that the king didn't like, and there were some other people traveling with him, and the king had these people seized. Would the king just throw them all into the dungeon? Or would he let the others go and just keep the one who angered him? Silk looked at him for a moment, and then spoke firmly. That question's unworthy of you, Garion. Garion flushed. I'm afraid of dungeons, he said in a small voice, suddenly very ashamed of himself. I don't want to be locked up in the dark forever when I don't even know what for. The kings of Sandaria are just and honest men, Silk told him. Not too bright, I'm afraid, but always fair. How can they be kings if they aren't wise? Garion objected. Wisdom's a useful trait in a king, Silk said, but hardly essential. How do they get to be kings, then? Garion demanded. Some are born into it, Silk said. The stupidest man in the world can be a king if he has the right parents. Sandarian kings have a disadvantage because they started so low. Sounds good, Core. Low? They were elected. Nobody ever elected a king before. Only the Sendars. You're not late? No, of course not, Kate. Welcome in. And thank you for the art as well. Oh, it's so good. How do you elect a king? Silk smiled. Very badly, Garion. It's a poor way to select a king. The other ways are worse, but election is a very bad way to choose a king. Tell me how it was done, Garion said. Silk glanced briefly at the rain-spattered window across the room and shrugged. It's a way to pass the time, he said. And then he leaned back, stretched his feet toward the fire, and began. It all started about 1,500 years ago, he said, his voice loud enough to reach the ears of Captain Brendig, who sat nearby writing on a piece of parchment. Sindaria wasn't a kingdom then, nor even a separate country. Good evening, So. I see you've got your name changed again. Sindaria wasn't a kingdom then, nor even a separate country. It had belonged from time to time to Trek, Algaria, or the Northern Arens, Wassite or Asturian, depending on the fortunes of the Arendish Civil War. When that war finally came to an end, and the Wassites were destroyed, and the Asturians had been defeated and driven into the untracked reaches of the Great Forest in northern Arendia, the Emperor of Tolnedra, Radhorb II, decided that there ought to be a kingdom here. How could a Tolnedran emperor make that kind of decision for Sindaria? Garion asked. The arm of the empire is very long, Silk said. The Great North Road had been built during the Second Borun dynasty. I think it was Ranborun IV who started the construction, wasn't it, Captain? The fifth, Brendig said somewhat sourly without looking up. Ranborun V. Thank you, Captain, Silk said. I can never keep the Borun dynasty straight. Anyway, there were already Imperial legions in Sindaria to maintain the highway, and if one has troops in an area, one has a certain authority, wouldn't you say, Captain? It's your story, Brendig said shortly. Indeed it is, Silk agreed. Now, it wasn't really out of any kind of generosity that Ranhorb made his decision, Garion. Don't misunderstand that. Tolnedrans never give anything away. It was just that the Mimbrate Arens had finally won the Arendish Civil War, 1,000 years of bloodshed and treachery, and Tolnedra couldn't afford to allow the Mimbrates to expand into the north. The creation of an independent kingdom in Sindaria would block Mimbrates' access to the trade routes down out of Dresnia and prevent the seat of the world power from moving to Vomimbre and leaving the imperial capital at Tol Holneth in a kind of backwater. It all sounds terribly involved, Garion said. Not really, Silk said. It's only politics, and that's a very simple game. Isn't it, Captain? A game I do not play, Brendig said, not looking up. Really? Silk asked. So long at court and not a politician? You're a rare man, Captain. At any rate, the Sendar suddenly discovered that they had themselves a kingdom, but that they had no genuine hereditary nobility. Oh, there were a few retired Tolnedran nobles living on estates here and there, assorted pretenders to this or that Wassite or Asturian title, a Trek war chief or two with a few followers, but no genuine Sendarian nobility. And so it was that they decided to hold a national election to select a king, don't you see, and then leave the bestowing of titles up to him. A very practical approach, and typically Sendarian. How do you elect a king? Garion asked, beginning to lose his dread of dungeons in his fascination with the story. Everybody votes, Silk said simply. Parents, of course, probably cast the votes for their children, but it appears that there was very little cheating. All the rest of the world stood around and laughed at all this foolishness, but the Cendars continued to cast ballot after ballot for a dozen years. 6 years, actually, Rendick said, with his face still down over his parchment. 3827 to 3833. And there were over 1,000 candidates, Silk said expansively. 743, Rendick said tightly. I stand corrected, noble captain, Silk said. It's an enormous comfort to have such an expert here to catch my errors. I'm but a simple Dresden merchant with little background in history. Anyway, on the 23rd ballot, they finally elected their king, a rutabaga farmer named Fundor. He raised more than just rutabagas, Rendick said, looking up with an angry face. Of course he did, Silk said, smacking his forehead with an open palm. How could I have forgotten the cabbages? He raised cabbages too, Garion. Never forget the cabbages. Well, everybody in Sandaria who thought he was important journeyed to Fundor's farm and found him vigorously fertilizing his fields, and they greeted him with a great cry, "Hail Fundor the Magnificent, King of Sandaria," and fell on their knees in his august presence. "Must we continue with this?" Rendick asked in a pained voice, looking up. "The boy wants to know, Captain," Silk replied with an innocent face. "It's our duty as his elders to instruct him in the history of our past. Wouldn't you say?" "Say whatever you like," Rendick said in a stiff voice. That was their first time drawing? They did very well, actually. "Thank you for your permission, Captain," Silk said, inclining his head. "Do you know what the King of Sandaria said then, Garion?" he asked. "No," Garion said. "What?" "I pray you, your eminences," the king said, "have a care for your finery. I have just well manured the bed in which you are kneeling." Barak, who was sitting nearby, roared with laughter, pounding his knee with one huge hand. "I find this less than amusing, sir," Captain Brendick said coldly, rising to his feet. "I make no jokes about the King of Drasnia, do I?" "You're a courteous man, Captain," Silk said mildly, "and a nobleman. I'm merely a poor man trying to make his way in the world." Brendick looked at him helplessly, and then turned and stamped from the room. "Hello, Never. Welcome in. And Happy New Year. I hope it's going well so far." The following morning, the wind had blown itself out and the rain had stopped. The road was very nearly a quagmire, but Brendick decided that they must continue. Travel that day was difficult, but the next was somewhat easier as the road began to drain. And Pole seemed unconcerned by the fact that they had been seized at the king's orders. She maintained her regal bearing, even though Garion saw no real need to continue the subterfuge and wished fervently that she would abandon it. The familiar, practical sensibility with which she had ruled her kitchen at Valder's farm had somehow been replaced by a kind of demanding willfulness that Garion found particularly distressing. For the first time in his life, he felt a distance between them, and it left a vacancy that had never been there before. To make matters worse, the gnawing uncertainty which had been steadily growing since Silk's unequivocal declaration on the hilltop outside Winnowed that Aunt Pole could not possibly be his aunt sawed roughly at his sense of his own identity, and Garion often found himself staring at the awful question, "Who am I?" Mr. Wolf seemed changed as well. He seldom spoke, either on the road nor at night in the hostels. He spent a great deal of time sitting by himself with an expression of moody irritability on his face. You honestly don't know what's happening, but you're enjoying? That's good to hear, Never. I'm currently reading a book by the name of Pawn of Prophecy. The first in 5 books in a nice series, my favorite actually. And you're joining us in the middle of chapter 11. To sort of catch you up onto speed. Garion, our main protagonist, grew up on a farm. Roughly no education, raised by his Aunt Pole. Living a nice, idyllic life until, one day, he was whisked away by an errant storyteller, along with his best friend Blacksmith, as they meet with several others on the quest for something. It's implied to be the Orb of Alder, a powerful jewel that somehow has been stolen, but on their way to find it, the King of Sendaria sent his soldiers and has the group seized as they're making their way to the castle. Of course, there's a lot more nuances and some nice fun character beats, but for now, that's the basic gist of where we're at. So hey, welcome in. Finally, on the 9th day after their departure from Kamar, the broad salt marshes ended, and the land along the coast became more rolling. They topped a hill about midday, just as the pale winter sun broke through the clouds, and therein, the valley below them, the walled city of Sendar lay facing the sea. A detachment of guards at the south gate of the city saluted smartly as Captain Brendig led the little party through, and he returned their salute crisply. The broad streets of the city seemed filled with people in the finest clothing, all moving about importantly as if their errands were the most vital in the world. Courtiers. Barak, who chanced to be riding beside Garion, snorted with contempt. Not a real man among them. "A necessary evil, my dear Barak," Silk said back over his shoulder to the big man. "Little jobs require little men, and it's the little jobs that keep a kingdom running." After they had passed through a magnificently large square, they moved up a wide avenue to the palace. It was a very large building with many stories and broad wings extending out on each side of the paved courtyard. The entire structure was surmounted by a round tower that was easily the highest edifice in the whole city. "Where do you suppose the dungeons are?" Garion whispered to Dernick when they stopped. "I would take it most kindly, Garion," Dernick said with a pained look, "if you would not speak so much of dungeons." Captain Brendig dismounted and went to meet a fussy-looking man in an embroidered tunic and feathered cap who came down the wide steps at the front of the palace to meet them. They spoke for a few moments, and they seemed to be arguing. "My orders are from the king himself," Brendig said, his voice carrying to where they sat. "I am commanded to deliver these people directly to him immediately upon our arrival." "My orders are also from the king," the fussy-looking man said, "and I am commanded to have them made presentable before they are delivered to the throne room. I'll take charge of them. They'll remain in my custody, Count Nilden, until they have been delivered to the king himself, Brendig said coldly. I won't have your muddy soldiers tracking through the halls of the palace, Lord Brendig, the Count replied. Then we'll wait here, Count Nilden, Brendig said. Be so good as to fetch his majesty. Fetch? The Count's face was aghast. I am chief butler to his majesty's household, Lord Brendig. I do not fetch anything or anybody. Brendig turned as if to remount his horse. Oh, very well, Count Nilden said petulantly. If you must have it your own way, at least have them wipe their feet. Brendig bowed coldly. I won't forget this, Lord Brendig, Nilden threatened. Nor shall I, Count Nilden, Brendig replied. Then they all dismounted and, with Brendig's soldiers drawn up in close order about them, they crossed the courtyard to a broad door near the center of the west wing. Be so good as to follow me, Count Nilden said, glancing with a shudder at the mud-spattered soldiers, and he led them into the wide corridor which lay beyond the door. Apprehension and curiosity struggled in Garion's mind. Despite the assurances of Silk and Durnick, and the hopeful implications of Count Nilden's announcement that he was going to have them made presentable, the threat of some clammy, rat-infested dungeon, complete with a rack and a wheel, and other unpleasant things, still seemed very real. On the other hand, he had never been in a palace before, and his eyes tried to be everywhere at once. That part of his mind which sometimes spoke to him in dry detachment told him that his fears were probably groundless, and that his gawking made him appear like a doltish country bumpkin. Count Nilden led them directly to a part of the corridor where there were a number of highly polished doors. This one is for the boy, he announced, pointing at one of them. One of the soldiers opened the door, and Garion reluctantly stepped through, looking back over his shoulder at Aunt Pole. Come along now, a somewhat impatient voice said. Garion whirled, not knowing what to expect. Close the door, boy, the fine-looking man who had been waiting for him said. You don't have all day, you know. The man was waiting beside a large wooden bathtub with steam rising from it. Quickly, boy, take off those filthy rags and get into the tub. His Majesty is waiting. Too confused to object or even answer, Garion numbly began to unlace his tunic. After he had been bathed and the knots had been brushed out of his hair, he was dressed in clothes which lay on a nearby bench. His coarse woolen hose of serviceable peasant brown were exchanged for ones of a much finer weave in a lustrous blue. His scuffed and muddy boots were traded for soft leather shoes. His tunic was soft white linen, and the doublet he wore over it was a rich blue, trimmed with a silvery fur. I guess that's the best I can do on short notice, the man who had bathed him and dressed him said, looking him up and down critically. At least I won't be totally embarrassed when you're presented to the king. Garion mumbled his thanks and then stood, waiting for further instructions. Well, go along, boy. You mustn't keep His Majesty waiting. Silk and Barak stood in the corridor, talking quietly. Barak was hugely splendid in a green brocade doublet, but looked uncomfortable without his sword. Silk's doublet was a rich black, trimmed in silver, and his scraggly whiskers had been carefully trimmed into an elegant short beard. What does all this mean? Garion asked as he joined them. We're to be presented to the king, Barak said, and our honest clothes might have given offense. Kings aren't accustomed to looking at ordinary men. Dernick emerged from one of the rooms, his face pale with anger. That overdressed fool wanted to give me a bath, he said in choked outrage. It's the custom, Silk explained. Noble guests aren't expected to bathe themselves. I hope you didn't hurt him. I'm not a noble, and I'm quite able to bathe myself, Dernick said hotly. I told him that I'd drown him in his own tub if he didn't keep his hands to himself. After that, he didn't pester me anymore. But he did steal my clothes. I had to put these on instead. He gestured at his clothes, which were quite similar to Garion's. I hope nobody sees me in all this frippery. Barak says the king might be offended if he saw us in our real clothes, Garion told him. The king won't be looking at me, Dernick said, and I don't like this business of trying to look like something I'm not. I'll wait outside with the horses if I can get my own clothes back. Be patient, Dernick, Barak advised. We'll get this business with the king straightened out, and then be on our way again. If Dernick was angry, Mr. Wolf was in what could best be described as a towering fury. He came out into the corridor dressed in a snowy white robe, deeply cowled at the back. Someone's going to pay for this, he raged. It does become you, Silk said admiringly. Your taste has always been questionable, Master Silk, Wolf said in a frosty tone. Where's Pole? The lady has not yet made her appearance, Silk said. I should have known, Wolf said, sitting down on a nearby bench. You may as well be comfortable. Pole's preparations usually take quite a while. And so they waited. Captain Brendig, who had changed his boots and doublet, paced up and down as the minutes dragged by. Garion was totally baffled by their reception. They did not seem to be under arrest, but his imagination still saw dungeons, and that was enough to make him jumpy. And then Aunt Pole appeared. She wore the blue velvet gown that had been made for her in Kamar, and a silver circlet about her head which set off the single white lock at her brow. Her bearing was regal, and her face stern. So soon, Mistress Pole? Wolf asked dryly. I hope you weren't rushed. She ignored that and examined each of them in turn. Adequate, I suppose, she said finally, absently adjusting the collar of Garion's doublet. Give me your arm, old wolf, and let's find out what the king of the Sendars wants with us. Mr. Wolf rose from his bench, extended his arm, and then the two of them started down the corridor. Captain Brendig hastily assembled his soldiers and followed them in some kind of ragged order. If you please, my lady, he called out to Aunt Pole, permit me to show you the way. We know the way, Lord Brendig, she replied, without so much as turning her head. Count Nilden, the chief butler, stood waiting for them in front of two massive doors, guarded by uniformed men-at-arms. He bowed slightly to Aunt Pole and snapped his fingers. The men-at-arms swung the heavy doors inward. Fulrek, the king of Sandaria, was a dumpy-looking man with a short brown beard. He sat rather uncomfortably, it appeared, on a high-backed throne which stood on a dais at one end of the great hall into which Count Nilden led them. The throne room was vast, with a high vaulted ceiling and walls covered with what seemed acres of heavy, red velvet drapery. There were candles everywhere, and dozens of people strolled about in fine clothes and chatted idly in the corners, all but ignoring the presence of the king. "May I announce you?" Count Nilden asked Mr. Wolf. "Full Rack knows who I am," Wolf replied shortly, and strode down the long scarlet carpet toward the throne with Aunt Pole still on his arm. Darian and the others followed, with Brendig and his soldiers close behind, through the suddenly quiet crowd of courtiers and their ladies. At the foot of the throne, they all stopped, and Wolf bowed rather coldly. Aunt Pole, her eyes frosty, curtsied, and Barak and Silk bowed in a courtly manner. Dernick and Garion followed suit, though not nearly as gracefully. "If it please your majesty," Brendick's voice came from behind them, "these are the ones you sought." "I knew you could be depended upon, Lord Brendig," the king replied in a rather ordinary-sounding voice. "Your reputation is well deserved. You have my thanks." Then he looked at Mr. Wolf and the rest of them, his expression undecipherable. Garion began to tremble. "My dear old friend," the king said to Mr. Wolf, "it's been too many years since we met last." "Have you lost your wits entirely, Fulrak?" Mr. Wolf snapped in a voice which carried no further than the king's ears. "Why do you choose to interfere with me, now of all times? And what possessed you to outfit me in this absurd thing?" He plucked at the front of his white robe in disgust. "Are you trying to announce my presence to every Murgo from here to the Hook of Arendia?" The king's face looked pained. "I was afraid you might take it that way," he said in a voice no louder than Mr. Wolf's had been. "I'll explain when we can speak more privately." He turned quickly to Aunt Pole, as if trying to preserve the appearance of at least some dignity. "It's been much too long since we have seen you, my dear lady. Layla and the children have missed you, and I have been desolate in your absence." "Your Majesty is too kind," Aunt Pole said, her tone as cold as Wolf's. "It's fine you finished your costume for a horror film you're working on. That sounds awesome." "That's exciting. A horror film? That's super cool." "Hi, Kongshindo. Welcome in. Let me translate what you're saying again." "Oh, you're hungry. Welcome back, Core." "Oh, you just ate?" "Or you're just really, really hungry?" Let's see. I wish I had an auto-translate. "Oh, the morning's very cold? Oh man, that sounds rough. How cold is it over there?" "I can do it." "Thank you, Kongshindo." Ah, it's nice to see everyone gathered together. Getting fried rice? Nasi goreng, huh? Nasi goreng. Let's see. Nasi goreng. Yep. Cool. I learned something. And now, back to the book. The king winced. "Pray, dear lady," he apologized, Don't judge me too hastily. My reasons were urgent. I hope that Lord Brendick's summons did not too greatly inconvenience you. Lord Brendick was the soul of courtesy, Aunt Pole said, her tone unchanged. She glanced once at Brendick, who had grown visibly pale. And you, my Lord Barak, the king hurried on, as if trying to make the best of a bad situation. How fares your cousin, our dear brother king, Anheg of Cherek? He was well when I last saw him, your majesty, Barak replied formally. A bit drunk, but that's not unusual for Anheg. The king chuckled a bit nervously and turned quickly to Silk. Prince Keldar of the royal house of Drasnia, he said, we are amazed to find such noble visitors in our realm, and more than a little injured that they choose not to call upon us so that we might greet them. Is the king of the Sendars of so little note that he's not even worth a brief stop? We intended no disrespect, your majesty, Silk replied, bowing, but our errand was of such urgency that there was no time for the usual courtesies. Let's see. I just have to translate this. Happy New Year to you too, Kongchindo. Like usual, yeah, I hope this year treats us all well. Improvements all around, even if things may not look the best for now. But they can always get better as we find those nice little moments to make it good anyways. We'll do our best. I hope you get some food soon, if you're hungry. The king flickered a warning glance at that, and surprisingly, wove his fingers in the scarce perceptible gestures of the Drasnian secret language. Not here, too many ears about. He then looked inquiringly at Dernick and Garion. Aunt Pole stepped forward. This is Goodman Dernick of the district of Arat, your majesty, she said, a brave and honest man. Welcome, Goodman Dernick, the king said. I can only hope that men may also one day call me a brave and honest man. Dernick bowed awkwardly, his face filled with bewilderment. I'm just a simple blacksmith, your honor, he said, but I hope all men know that I'm your honor's most loyal and devoted subject. Well spoken, Goodman Dernick, the king said with a smile, and then he looked at Garion. A boy, your majesty, and Pole followed his glance. A boy, your majesty, she said rather indifferently. Garion by name. He was placed in my care some years ago and accompanies us because I didn't know what else to do with him. A terrible coldness struck at Garion's stomach. The certainty that her casual words were in fact the bald truth came crashing down upon him. She had not even tried to soften the blow. The indifference with which she had destroyed his life hurt almost more than the destruction itself. Also welcome, Garion, the king said. You travel in noble company for one so young. I didn't know who they were, your majesty, Garion said miserably. Nobody tells me anything. The king laughed in tolerant amusement. As you grow older, Garion, he said, you'll probably find that during these days, such innocence is the most comfortable state in which to live. I've been told things of late that I'd much prefer not to know. May we speak privately now, Volrak? Mr. Wolf said, his voice still irritated. In good time, my old friend, the king replied. I've ordered a banquet prepared in your honor. Let's all go in and dine. Layla and the children are waiting for us. There will be time to discuss certain matters. And with that, he rose and stepped down from the dais. Well, yeah, I hope you got to eat some fried rice. Your favorite, huh? Interesting. At least I think so. Taps, welcome, and thank you for the follow. I hope you enjoy your stay, and Happy New Year. Someday I'll fix the notifications. Someday. Let's see. Very nice, yeah. Garion, sunk in his private misery, fell in beside Silk. Prince Keldar, he said, desperately needing to take his mind off the shocking reality that had just fallen upon him. Follower alerts when I figure out why it's not working. It's funny, I actually bought some new alerts that I thought looked very cute. I got them all set up and placed, tested them, and they worked. Then turns out, actually trying it on stream live, nothing happens. I just popped up on your feed randomly and you're glad you joined? Thank you, Crow. Those are some kind words and that means a lot. I hope you enjoy your stay. We definitely try to keep the vibes nice and relaxing here. I think I have an idea as to why the alerts aren't working, but more science is needed. Garion, sunk in his private misery, fell in beside Silk. Prince Keldar, he said, desperately needing to take his mind off the shocking reality that had just fallen upon him. An accident of birth, Garion, Silk said with a shrug, something over which I had no control. Fortunately, I'm only the nephew of the King of Drasnia, and far down the line of succession. I'm not in any immediate danger of ascending the throne. And Barak is the cousin of King Anhag of Cherek, Silk replied. He looked over his shoulder. What's your exact rank, Barak? He said. The Earl of Trelheim, Barak rumbled. Why do you ask? The lad here was curious, Silk said. Don't you know you're watching SpongeBob right now? I wonder what that sounds like over where you live, actually. That's curious. At least I hope that's what Google Translate is correct about. It's all nonsense anyway, Barak said. But when Anheg became king, someone had to become clan chief. In Cherek, you can't be both. It's considered unlucky, particularly by the chiefs of the other clans. I can see why they might feel that way, Silk laughed. It's an empty title anyway, Barak observed. There hasn't been a clown war in Cherek. Clown. Let me drink some water. 1 moment. It's an empty title anyway, Barak observed. There hasn't been a clan war in Cherek for over 3,000 years. I let my youngest brother act in my stead. He's a simple-minded fellow, and easily amused. Besides, it annoys my wife. You're married? Garion was startled. If you want to call it that, Barak said sourly. Silk nudged Garion warningly, indicating that this was a delicate subject. Just a pause. One of those important lessons I learned in workshop is, of course, keeping your instruments nice and well lubricated. So, make sure you all stay hydrated. It's very important, and also helps with enunciation, pronunciation, and just generally keeping your mouth not dry. Why didn't you tell us? Carrion demanded accusingly. About your titles, I mean. Would it have made any difference? Silk asked. Well, no, Carrion admitted, but... He stopped, unable to put his feelings about the matter into words. I don't understand any of this, he concluded lamely. It'll all become clear in time, Silk assured him, as they entered the banquet hall. The hall was almost as large as the throne room. There were long tables covered in fine linen cloth, and once again candles everywhere. A servant stood behind each chair, and everything was supervised by a plump little woman with a beaming face and a tiny crown perched precariously atop her head. As they all entered, she came forward quickly. Dear Pole, she said, you look just wonderful. She embraced Aunt Pole warmly, and the two began talking together animatedly. Queen Layla, Silk explained briefly to Garion. They call her the mother of Sandaria. The 4 children over there are hers. She has 4 or 5 others, older and probably away on state business, since Fulrek insists that his children earn their keep. It's a standard joke among the other kings that Queen Layla's been pregnant since she was 14, but that's probably because they're expected to send royal gifts at each new birth. She's a good woman, though, and she keeps King Fulrek from making too many mistakes. It's medieval times, unfortunately. So, ages are gonna be a little weird. What can I say except... She knows Aunt Pole, Garion said, and the fact disturbed him for some reason. Everybody knows your Aunt Pole, Silk told him. Speak Brazilian? Galina Bombada? I really don't know Brazilian. I mean, I'm half Guatemalan, so I can at least kind of understand, but in terms of actually like how to speak stuff, I've got nothing, sadly. I'm sorry. Since Aunt Pole and the Queen were deep in conversation and already drifting toward the head of the table, Garion stayed close to Silk. Don't let me make any mistakes, he gestured, trying to keep the movements of his fingers inconspicuous. Silk winked in reply. Once they were all seated and the food began to arrive, Garion began to relax. He found that all he had to do was follow Silk's lead, and the intricate niceties of formal dining no longer intimidated him. The talk around him was dignified and quite incomprehensible, but he reasoned that no one was likely to pay much attention to him, and that he was probably safe if he kept his mouth shut and his eyes on his plate. I learned that lesson too when I was younger. An elderly nobleman with a beautifully curled silvery beard, however, leaned toward him. You have traveled recently, I'm told, he said in a somewhat condescending tone. How fares the kingdom, young man? Garion looked helplessly across the table at Silk. What do I say? He gestured with his fingers. Tell him that the kingdom fares no better, nor no worse than might be anticipated under the present circumstances, Silk replied. Garion dutifully repeated that. Ah, the old nobleman said, much as I had expected. You're a very observant boy for one so young. I enjoy talking with young people. Their views are so fresh. Sorry, next time I talk with somebody around the age of 20, I'm gonna say that to them. Sorry, sorry. This is supposed to be relaxing. Be right back, be right back. I have to deal with this. Okay. Oh, all right. The laughing has finished. Hey, how's everyone doing? Thank you. I'm back. Back to the book. Who is he? Garion gestured. The Earl of Selene, Silk replied. He's a tiresome old bore, but be polite to him. Address him as my lord. I'm never being the old man allegations, by the way. That's all right. I've already had many an internal crisis about it, and I realize I'm never getting that time back. So might as well enjoy it while I can. Because one day I too shall wither and disappear into the night, never to be heard from again. And perhaps the memory of me will keep me alive, but soon that too shall fade away. I'm just kidding. I just made it sad now. It is sad. It's sad you make fun of my age. Anyways. And how did you find the roads? The Earl inquired. Somewhat in disrepair, my lord, Garion replied with Silk's prompting. But that's normal for this time of year, isn't it? Indeed it is, the Earl said approvingly. What a splendid boy you are. You're sorry. Listen, I know you're kidcore, but like, come on. I was there during those days. The strange three-way conversation continued, and Garion even began to enjoy himself at the comments fed to him by Silk as the comments fed to him by Silk seemed to amaze the old gentleman. At last, the banquet was over, and the king rose from his seat at the head of the table. And now, dear friends, he announced, Queen Layla and I would like to visit privately with our noble guests, and so we pray you will excuse us. He offered his arm to Aunt Pole, Mr. Wolf offered his to the plump little queen, and the four of them walked toward the far door of the hall. This is why I'm turning to dust. I think I probably want to. Like, probably not the best topic to talk about at the beginning of the new year. I'll be here for many more. Hopefully. But probably cremation's probably the way to go. Maybe. We'll think on that. The Earl of Selene smiled broadly at Garion, and then looked across the table. "I've enjoyed our conversation, Prince Keldar," he said to Silk. "I may indeed be a tiresome old bore, as you say, but that can sometimes be an advantage, don't you think?" Silk laughed ruefully. "I should have known that an old fox like you would be an adept at the secret language, my lord." "A legacy from a misspent youth," the Earl laughed. "Your pupil is most proficient, Prince Keldar, but his accent is strange." "The weather was cold while he was learning, my lord," Silk said, "and our fingers were a bit stiff. I'll correct the problem when we have leisure." Silly Cord. I'm gonna hold back from what I was gonna say. The old nobleman seemed enormously pleased with himself at having outsmarted Silk. "Splendid boy," he said, patting Garion's shoulder, and then he went off chuckling to himself. "Man, you lit a match? Goodness, seems like it's getting a bit warm in here." Anyways. Sigh. Listen, let me have fun. I'm allowed to have fun. That's part of the nice vibes too. A smile on my face, and with smooth, soothing words, heading towards your guys's. That's what we like around here. It's not bingo night yet. That reminds me. During the Christmas party at the office I work at, which hilariously is nowhere near Christmas time, but during the Christmas party, while everyone had to keep working, there were plenty of people that of course finished early or paused doing whatever they were doing. And one of the activities that we had around the office was, in fact, bingo. And let me tell you, it was actually kinda hype. I didn't play, but I did go into the break room because, well, I needed water. And they had like a huge speaker set up. Everyone was sat around the tables. They had a large spinning thing. And everyone was having a blast playing bingo. I do think my favorite bingo experiences, though, were actually from a time about like 2 years ago, playing a game called Tower Unite, which is kind of like what are the words? The reincarnation of Gmod Tower. That sounds lit? Oh yeah. Where's everybody going? Bingo? Yes, the answer was yes. Why weren't you invited? Well, I don't see you working at the company. But yeah, 2 years ago, or was it 3? I don't remember. 2 or 3 years ago, I of course was very close with a friend. And she and I, we would play all sorts of games together. And then bingo was one of our favorite things, constantly competing against each other. Head-to-head bingo. Don't worry, I can bring you as my daughter to take my kid to work day. That'd be wild if I had you when I was younger. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that one, Core. That's a little weird. Because I don't look old. Seriously, I look fresh-faced. No one believes how old I am when I say it. The voice might give it away, but the face does not. I know people have kids my age. Obviously. But I'm saying we don't have you that early. Unless you're like 14 or something. What up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never learned how to read. Anyways, back to actually reading, ignoring that vine. Anyway, this topic's a little weird, Core. No one would ever believe you're my daughter. End of story. What's wrong with the Vine era? Vine was great. Those 6 seconds were magical. That's a greater symbol. You loved Vine? Me too. Me too. You knew he understood all along, Gary accused Silk. Of course, Silk said. Drasnian intelligence knows every adept at our secret speech. Sometimes it's useful to permit certain carefully selected messages to be intercepted. Don't ever underestimate the Earl of Selene, however. It's not impossible that he's at least as clever as I am, but look at how much he enjoyed catching us. Can't you ever do anything without being sly? Garion asked. His tone was a bit grumpy, since he was convinced that somehow he had been the butt of the whole joke. Not unless I absolutely have to, my Garion, Silk laughed. People such as I continually practice deception, even when it's not necessary. Our lives sometimes depend on how cunning we are, and so we need to keep our wits sharp. It must be a lonely way to live, Garion observed rather shrewdly at the silent prompting of his inner voice. You never really trust anyone, do you? I suppose not, Silk said. It's a game we play, Garion. We're all very skilled at it. At least, we are if we intend to live very long. We all know each other, since we're members of a very small profession. The rewards are great, but after a while, we play our game only for the joy of defeating each other. You're right, though. It is lonely, and sometimes disgusting, but most of the time, it's a great deal of fun. Man, can we just say what a character already? This is only the first book, and yet here we have a nice introspective look at one of them. The Silk's the best. You forgot I was reading. That sounded so real. Well, that just means I'm reading very well then, doesn't it? Count Nilden came up to them and bowed politely. His Majesty asks that you and the boy join him and your other friends in his private apartments, Prince Keldar, he said, if you'll be so good as to follow me. W voice actor. Thank you. That does remind me, I think my main goal for this year, I want to be cast into something by the end of 2025. It's not going to be easy. I'm gonna have to do some things that make me very, very uncomfortable to get there, which is namely putting myself out there and finding something, but I want that to be the goal for this year. At least something. It could be a bit part, maybe even just a line or two, but I want my name in a credit. Thank you, Manya. Those are some sweet words. And welcome in. Happy New Year. I hope it's treating you well. And now, back to the book. Of course, Silk said. Come along, Garion. Me too, Core. The king's private apartments were much simpler than the ornate halls in the main palace. King Fulrak had removed his crown and state robes, and now looked much like any other Sendar in rather ordinary clothes. He stood talking quietly with Barak. Queen Layla and Aunt Pole were seated on a couch deep in conversation, and Dernick was not far away, trying his best to look inconspicuous. Mr. Wolf stood alone near a window, his face like a thundercloud. Thank you, Cor. Ah, Prince Keldar, the king said. We thought perhaps you and Garion had been waylaid. We were fencing with the Earl of Selene, your majesty, Silk said lightly. Figuratively speaking, of course. Be careful of him, the king cautioned. It's quite possible that he's too shrewd even for one of your talents. I have a great deal of respect for the old scoundrel, Silk laughed. King Fulrak glanced apprehensively at Mr. Wolf, then squared his shoulders and sighed. Thank you, Manya. I hope yours do too as well. And I hope you decide to stick around. Our streams can be a little silly sometimes, but I always have the goal of having everyone smile and relax. And enjoy, of course. I suppose we'd better get this unpleasantness over with, he said. Layla, would you entertain our other guests while I give our grim-faced old friend there and the lady the opportunity to scold me? It's obvious that he's not going to be happy until they've said a few unkind things to me about some matters that weren't really my fault. Stick around. I'm not a grandpa. Until they've said some few unkind things to me about some matters that weren't really my fault. You love grandpa stories. You'll fit right in. I mean, yeah, it's an eventuality, Core. Yes, I know. Of course, dear, Queen Layla said. Try not to be too long, and please don't shout. The children have been put to bed, and they need their rest. Aunt Pole rose from the couch, and she and Mr. Wolf, whose expression hadn't changed, followed the king into an adjoining chamber. Well then, Queen Layla said pleasantly, what shall we talk about? I am instructed, your highness, to convey the regards of Queen Porrine of Dresnia to you, should the occasion arise, Silk said in a courtly manner. She asks leave of you to broach a correspondence on a matter of some delicacy. Why, of course, Queen Layla beamed. She's a dear child, far too pretty and sweet-natured for that fat old bandit Rodar. I hope he hasn't made her unhappy. No, your highness, Silk said. Amazing though it may seem, she loves my uncle to distraction, and he, of course, is delirious with joy over so young and beautiful a wife. It's positively sickening the way they dote on each other. You heard that right, Cor. Someday, Prince Keldar, you will fall in love, the queen said with a little smirk, and the 12 kingdoms will stand around and chortle over the fall of so notorious a bachelor. What is this matter Porine wishes to discuss with me? It's a question of, fertility, Your Highness, Silk said with a delicate cough. She wants to present my uncle with an heir, and she needs to seek your advice in the business. The entire world stands in awe of your gifts in that particular area. Queen Layla blushed prettily and then laughed. I'll write to her at once, she promised. Garion, by now, had carefully worked his way to the door through which King Fulrak had taken Aunt Pole and Mr. Wolf. He began a meticulous examination of a tapestry on the wall to conceal the fact that he was trying to hear what was going on behind the closed door. It took him only a moment to begin to pick up familiar voices. Exactly what does all this foolishness mean, Fulrak? Mr. Wolf was saying. Please, don't judge me too hastily, Ancient One, the king said placatingly. Some things have happened that you might not be aware of. You know that I'm aware of everything that happens, Wolf said. Did you know that we are defenseless if the Accursed One awakens? That which held him in check has been stolen from off the throne of the Riven King. As a matter of fact, I was following the trail of the thief when your noble Captain Brendick interrupted me in my search. I'm sorry, Fulrak said, but you wouldn't have gone much farther anyway. All the kings of Eloria have been searching for you for 3 months now. Your likeness, drawn by the finest artists, is in the hands of every ambassador, agent, and official of the 5 kingdoms of the north. Actually, you've been followed since you left Arene. Fulrak, I'm busy. Tell the Alorn kings to leave me alone. Why are they suddenly so interested in my movements? They want to have a council with you, the king said. The Alorns are preparing for war, and even my poor Sindaria is being quietly mobilized. If the Accursed One arises now, we're all doomed. The power that's been stolen can very possibly be used to awaken him, and his first move will be to attack the west. You know that, Belgarath. And you also know that until the return of the Riven King, the west has no real defense. Garion blinked and started violently, then tried to cover the sudden movement by bending over to look at some of the finer detail on the tapestry. He told himself that he had heard wrong. The name King Fulrak had spoken could not really have been Belgarath. Belgarath was a fairy tale figure, a myth. Just tell the Alorn kings that I'm in pursuit of the thief, Mr. Wolf said. I don't have time for councils now. If they'll leave me alone, I should be able to catch up with him before he can do any mischief with the thing that he's managed to steal. Don't tempt fate, Fulrak, Aunt Pole advised. Your interference is costing us time we can't afford to lose. Presently, I'll become vexed with you. The king's voice was firm as he answered, Hello, David Play. Welcome in. I know your power, Lady Polgara, he said, and Garion jumped again. I don't have any choice, however, the king continued. I'm bound by my word to deliver you all up to Valalorn, to the kings of Eloria, and a king can't break his word to the other kings. There was a long silence in the other room, while Garion's mind raced through a dozen possibilities. You're not a bad man, Fulrak, Mr. Wolf said. Not perhaps as bright as I might wish, but a good man nonetheless. I won't raise a hand against you, nor will my daughter. Ah, Kate has responded, Cor. One question, am I a boy? Am I a man, or am I a Muppet? Technically, as a VTuber, I'm both. But yes, I'm a guy. Speak for yourself, old wolf, Aunt Pole said grimly. No, Polgara, he said. Who asked that? Ah, David Play asked that. Looks like it's just not popping up on YouTube. So that's interesting. On the YouTube chat. I can read it, though. Hello, Galaxy Mushroom. Welcome in. Good to see you. And Happy New Year. I was delayed? Yeah. What am I from? From the world. From anywhere and everywhere. For me personally, America. Speak for yourself, old wolf, Aunt Pole said grimly. No, Polgara, he said, if we have to go to Valalorn, let's go with all possible speed. The sooner we explain things to the Alorns, the sooner they'll stop interfering. How'd the party go? It was alright. Alright, I didn't actually talk about what we did. So, after I had got enough, I tried to spend some time with some friends. In the end, I spent time with only one because everyone else fell asleep. And I was actually getting very, very tired. So, about half an hour before the New Year's drop, I decided to just take a break, get up and spend some time with my parents. Just sort of watching the rest of the world enjoy their New Year's until the last few seconds of the New Year when we did our tradition. Which of course, as I explained before, is the eating of the grapes and then cracking an egg in the glass in order to see what sort of year 2025 will be. And then later in the day doing it again. Because the first egg has the energies of 2024. The second egg, the energies of 2025. My fortunate prediction is interesting. As always, lots of potential. But I have to be careful, of course, with my finances, as I have been spending quite a bit of money, and I can't be generous, I have to be careful with that. And of course, my health as well. Same old, same old. What did you guys do for New Year's, if you did anything? Or any sort of parties that may have happened? Anyways, back to the book. I think age is beginning to soften your brain, Father, Aunt Pole said. We don't have the time for this excursion to Valalorn. Fulrek can explain it to the Alorn kings. We shall all be budgeting baddies this year, hell yeah. Frugality shall be the name of the game. Only making a purchase if we have at least triple the funds for it. You were painting your room, New Year, new room. You know, as rough as that is, that also does sound like a nice way to bring in the new year. Changing up the energy and the vibes of your room sounds nice. I know this year one of my projects is emptying out another room of this house and basically converting it to not only a room but also to a studio at the same time. Like a bed, my computer stuff, lots of space for virtual reality shenanigans, maybe a TV. The whole shebang. The only problem is that it is full of many, many, many boxes. So it definitely will be a project. For New Year's Eve, all you did was watch Scream and Draw? That's great, though. Oh, classic Scream. And, of course, we all enjoy your art, Kate. So, we don't have the time for this excursion to Val Alorn. Fulrec can explain to the Alorn kings. It won't do any good, Lady Bulgara, the king said rather ruefully. As your father so pointedly mentioned, I'm not considered very bright. The Alorn kings won't listen to me. If you leave now, they'll just send someone like Brendick to apprehend you again. Then that unfortunate man may suddenly find himself living out the remainder of his days as a toad, or possibly a radish, Aunt Pole said ominously. Enough of that, Pole, Mr. Wolf said. Is there a ship ready, Fulrak? It lies at the North Wharf, Belgarath, the king replied. A Turek vessel sent by King Anhag. You cooking up more art soon? Excellent. That's exciting, Kate. Very well, Mr. Wolf said. Tomorrow then we'll go to Turek. It seems that I'm going to have to point out a few things to some thick-headed Alorns. Will you be going with us? Ooh, your goal is to tidy the house a bit too, so you start to make things an even bigger mess. That's always how it starts, but once it all comes together, it's all worth it. So, great job, Manya. I'm obliged to, Fulrek said. The council's to be general, and Sindaria's involved. You haven't heard the last of this, Fulrek, Aunt Pole said. Never mind, Pole, Mr. Wolf said. He's only doing what he thinks is right. We'll straighten it all out in Val Alorn. Darian was trembling as he stepped away from the door. It was impossible. His skeptical Sindarian upbringing made him at first incapable of even considering such an absurdity. Reluctantly, however, he finally forced himself to look at the idea full in the face. You didn't do much for your New Year's, just watched a countdown stream? I mean, that's at least a way of celebrating it, though. And you had food, which is always nice. What if Mr. Wolf really was Belgarath the Sorcerer, a man who had lived for over 7,000 years? And what if Aunt Pole really was his daughter, Polgara the Sorceress, who was only slightly younger? All the bits and pieces, the cryptic hints, the half-truths fell together. Silk had been right. She could not be his aunt. Arian's orphaning was complete now. He was adrift in the world with no ties of blood or heritage to cling to. Desperately, he wanted to go home, back to Falder's farm where he could sink himself into unthinking obscurity in a quiet place where there were no sorcerers or strange searches or anything that would remind him of Aunt Pole and the cruel hoax she had made of his life. And that is the end of part 1 of the Pawn of Prophecy, which will lead to part 2, Shrek. You're trying to finish Iron Flame before Onyx Storm comes out? And he's... That's a good New Year's resolution. How quickly do you read? Generally. I was right. It was Iron Flame. I see someone like spicy romance and dragon riders. Hilariously, I was thinking of reading the series for stream. Hello, Sonny. Welcome in. Happy New Year. How are you doing? All right, everyone. With that book chapter finished for now, I think take a little bit of a break just so I can drink some water, relax the voice. That's not the only thing's writing, by the way. Not in that book. Water. It would help your attention span if I read it. Ah, man, that's... Man, I would have to actually start 18 plus streams if that were the case, though. Because let me tell you, it's spicy. And I should not read that to anyone younger. Then again, my YouTube analytics tell me that I'm popular with ages 18 through 32, 36, I think. So maybe it's fine. Well, we did have a few youngins show up that one time, so... What can you do? Alright. How's the throat? Am I okay? Yeah, I'm okay. If I get a Patreon, you'd subscribe. That's a good idea, actually. Oh no, that's a good idea, actually. Oh no. Alright. I will talk it out with people and see how that goes. Oh no. But for now, I did say at the beginning of stream, after we did Duolingo, because I started that today too. Your brain cells do work from time to time? Well done. I'm going to start a visual novel. Let's see, go to the cover. So, this series had actually come out either last year or the year before, but it had gotten an anime adaptation that I really, really loved, and I was so interested in it, I actually bought the entire series and have been keeping up with it. The series is called Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill. The story of a man who gets isekai'd. However, he has the special power of Amazon shopping. He's not a hero, but he does get a cool power nonetheless. And what'll be interesting about this one is it's in first person. Oh, the art's cute too. Let's see. I don't want to show the entire window though. It sounds like a great story, yeah. It's very, very interesting as things go horribly right and wrong at the same time. I play any games? I play games all the time. Just the other day, I beat Celeste. Not fully, mind you, but we got to see the credits. And sometimes we like to have fun with other games as well. Horror games, RPGs, platformers, action games will happen eventually. The whole shebang. Generally, though, I like to keep a nice even split between playing games and reading. You know, have your fun and then relax afterwards. That's the kind of vibe we go for around here. All right. So, we will now begin Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill, Volume 1. Chapter 1. I got caught up in a hero summoning, but everything seemed incredibly shady, so I ran. All of a sudden, I was in a fantasy world of swords and magic straight out of medieval Europe. You're from Venezuela, but you know English? Yeah, you've been speaking very well so far, David. That's cool. Let's see. How different is the accent from Venezuela language? Like, you just speak Spanish. Así que si quieres, puedes descansar y disfrutar y... Sí juego juegos a veces. Pero la mayoría del tiempo yo leo libros y cuento historias y hago todo eso de ASMR como es popular. Y si te cae bien, espero que disfrutes tu visita aquí y estés aquí más tiempo. Anyways, Spanish out of the way. Hi, everybody. So, first line again. I speak Spanish, sure do. All of a sudden, I was in a fantasy world of swords and magic, straight out of medieval Europe. My name is Makoto Tsuyoshi, 27 and single. I'm just a humble salaryman living in the suburbs of Japan. If asked why I'm in a world such as this, it's because I was caught in a hero summoning ritual. I've read web novels to kill time, so I'm familiar enough with the trope as to be sick of it, but never in my wildest dreams did I think it would actually happen. I speak Spanish? Yeah. And to think, I'm not even the hero. I'm just collateral damage. This is no joke. Tell you something in Spanish real quick. Bueno pues, Core, me encanta cada vez que haces tu arte. Tus dibujos siempre dan alegría cada vez que los haces. Kate. The country that held this hero summoning ceremony was a place named the Kingdom of Reichseger. Even though there were supposed to be 3 people summoned, 4 people showed up, so the higher-ups in all the room made troubled faces. Although the ones who were most troubled by this were the people who'd been suddenly whisked away into another world. In other words, us. Basically, I just told Core that I always greatly enjoy their art, and anytime they draw something, it always brings happiness to everybody. My accent's really good? Thank you. I would hope so. When I said I was half Guatemalan, I was not kidding. And I lived there for 5 years too. So, I've got practice. That's always the part that makes languages really come together, is actually getting that practice in. When did I say that? Well, you see, I said that in Spanish before. That's what I was saying. So sweet and so true. Yeah. So, hello, welcome to more cast lore. I mean, they're coming at us and calling us heroes all of a sudden. I had already caught on to the fact that this was another world because I've been reading all those web novels, though. To be honest, I got my hopes up just a little because they were calling me hero. But those hopes were dashed pretty quick. Right after we were summoned, they immediately had our statuses appraised with a magic tool. In the job column of our statuses, Everyone other than me, they were all wearing school uniforms, so I think they were all high schoolers, had hero from another world written down, but I was a victim from another world. On top of that, all their stats like HP and MP were between 700 and 800, while all my stats were only about 100. Spanish Stream 1. I'll think about it. I mean, there was kind of a reason I wasn't really using the Spanish all that much, and like I can flip-flop between them. I'm a very Spanglish person. I don't know. It's effort. I'm allowed to be lazy sometimes. Plus, we had just started learning Japanese today. Again. I've had classes before, but sadly, whenever you don't use a language, you do forget everything, so gotta start from scratch. I know that's what happened to my German before. So all I have left is Ich nicht spreche Deutsch, which translated badly means I don't speak German. That's all I have left. Even so, those numbers apparently were above average for this world. So, I was told that I was at least somewhat powerful. But my stats clearly didn't measure up to theirs, so that fact was no consolation at all. You gonna lock in this time? That's right, we're all gonna learn together. We're all gonna be adept. And Japanese, and who knows? We'll maybe throw some Spanish in there as well. The number of skills I had was no comparison to those three either. Their skills all had, including skills we all had like appraisal and item box, they all had stuff that shocked the higher-ups that were there, like holy sword skill, or holy spear skill, or even sacred magic. And on top of that, they all had the skills for elemental magic like fire, water, earth, wind, sacred, lightning, and ice. They were the definition of overpowered. Compared to them, I only had the unique skill, online supermarket. My immediate reaction was, no, what the hell kind of skill is that? I mean, I knew what an online supermarket was. I owed online supermarkets a lot. But it's a skill, you know? A skill. There ought to be something more magic-like or something. No? Probably need to relearn Spanish, it's rather rusty. And of course, when you use it, what you do know will come back to you. And then you can just build off of that as your foundation. The people of this other world had no idea what the skill was. And the three with the hero job all laughed at me. So, thanks to this unique skill, I was immediately branded as useless. Even so, there was no doubt I was summoned to this world with the hero summoning ceremony. So, I was able to participate in the audience with the king. But what he said was shady as all heck. If I could have an elemental power, what would it be? And I can't say on the supermarket, but it's overpowered. But it's such a good power. I don't know. I've always been a windy kind of boy. The ability to fly and push things around and put things out and tornadoes are all very well and cool. Telekinesis was also a favorite of mine. Let's see. I like swords. I like the idea of summoning swords. And throwing more swords, warping to swords. More swords, all the time. Make cool sword wings. Throw the swords. You definitely see wind. Thank you. What would your powers be for an elemental power? That goes for everybody. So, I was able to participate in the audience with the king, but what he said was shady as all heck. According to the king, the Demon King frequently attacks this country because he wants to conquer it. They've somehow managed to stall him for now, but they have no idea how long they'll be able to keep up the status quo. The kingdom's people are suffering under these continued conditions. With those feelings, they had no choice but to rely on the ancient ritual of hero summoning. It's a selfish wish after summoning us here at their convenience, but they want us to somehow save this country. And they don't know of a way to return us back to our world here in this country, but the Demon King might know of a way, as he has lived a long life and is extremely skilled at magic. Windbender Cassian? Listen. Avatar The Last Airbender was a super sick series. One of the best of all time. Core says ice. Mushroom says water. And those are very lovely elemental powers. That reminds me of an RPG series called Breath of Fire. And I'm not sure if this was always the case, but at least in 3 and 4, you could actually combine elements together by casting them certain spells in order. So for example, you could get ice magic by first casting like a water spell and then a wind spell. You could make a big ol' fiery explosion with wind and fire. Get some earth ones. It was cool. Very, very neat. As a kid, you always liked water characters. They're always nice. They're fun. You don't know what yours would be? That's fair, Kate. You can always think about it. And see what floats your boat. Or you could even take one of those quizzes, you know? The what's my element kind of quiz. That'd be a fun day, actually. Just spend like a whole hour or two just doing quizzes like that. That's a good idea, actually. I'll write that down. Well, it was that kind of excuse. There was clearly something going on here, especially them putting off responsibility for returning us to our world for later. Also, the king said that this country was in dire straits, but the people here had none of that grimness about them. Not only that, but the king was a very obese old man, and he was wearing a gemstone-studded gaudy-as-all-heck mantle that screams, "Just how much money did you put into this?" And sitting next to the king, his wife, and their daughter beside her, are both wearing flashy dresses that put on display just how they're living in the lap of luxury. Would a royal family expressing grief over the state of their people put forward an appearance like they're indulging in every luxury they can? Putting together all these observations, I came to the conclusion that this was one of those no-good types of otherworld summonings. Even though they called us heroes, in the end we'll probably just be used conveniently by the country, like being sent out in wars to expand the country's territory. Moreover, I wasn't even a hero, so I probably can't expect to be treated well. In the worst case, I might even be executed. I decided that it would be best if I could leave the castle as soon as I could. That's why, at this time, I acted as humble as I could and said this. Seeing as how I'm not a hero, I'd only be causing everyone trouble by remaining here. Doing that would riddle me with guilt, so if I could just have enough money to live during the 2 or 3 months it would take for me to find employment, I'd like to leave and live on my own. And just as I expected, they gave me 20 gold coins and tossed me out of the castle with the haste of someone getting rid of a nuisance. And so, we've come to the present, with me rocking around the streets of the capital. I had no idea if 20 gold coins was a lot or nothing at all, but at any rate, I'd been given enough money for me to at least live for a while. I thought to myself, I need to hurry up and learn more about this world, starting with the value of the currency, don't I? And then, I'll need to leave this country as soon as possible. With a king like that, I can't imagine this country is a good place to be, and I don't think anything good will happen to me if I stay either. Okay, with that decided, let's hurry up and take action. This capital resembled a town out of medieval Europe. I started off by calling out to some children who were idling about on the street nearby. Hey, you guys have some time? I just arrived from way out in the country, so I'm not familiar with this place. I'll treat you to some skewers from the stall over there, so can you teach me some stuff? They were wary at first, but they couldn't win against their stomachs, and so they eventually agreed. I bought the children 2 skewers each and listened to what they told me. The first thing I asked them about was the value of the currency here, which one could argue was the most important thing to learn, and came to these conclusions based on what they said. 1 iron coin is about 10 yen, 1 copper coin 100 yen, 1 silver coin 1,000 yen, 1 gold coin 10,000 yen, 1 large gold coin 100,000 yen, and 1 platinum coin 1,000,000 yen. The skewers I treated the children to were 5 iron coins each. If a family of 4 had 6 gold coins, they could probably live off that for at least a month. I also heard of the existence of the adventurers and merchants guilds, which weren't attached to any country. Both of these were basically mainstays of any fantasy novel. And that belonging to either of these guilds would make moving from country to country or town to town smooth. Basically, it would lessen the costs of doing so. If one had a form of identification not from either the adventurers or merchants guilds, or no form of identification at all, like those from rural areas or children living on the streets often didn't have these, one would get taxed when trying to get into countries or cities therein. This kind of stuff is common in the genre. I also asked about this country, and I heard that, while the conflict with the demonic race was real, apparently, this country was the aggressor. The stated reason was to destroy the demons that cause harm to humans, but in the end, their real aim was the demon folks' land. This country has also been making suspicious moves towards the neighboring, human-led countries too, so people have been leaving the country little by little for a while now. The children also told me that they were orphans whose parents had died in the war. These children knew more than I expected. Apparently, they see and hear a lot because they take on a lot of menial jobs to earn money to live. Orphans are really tough. Anyway, I'd planned to stay at an inn tonight and leave the capital tomorrow. I heard from the children that there's a stagecoach that goes to a town called Keels, which lies on the border to another country every day. So, I was set on riding that to get out of here. After that, I was going to cross the border and figure things out from there. At any rate, getting out of Ragesager Kingdom was the most important thing. In order to do that, I'd need some funds, but I had an idea for that. I also already had the 20 gold coins I was given from the country. They probably gave me a bit more than was necessary because they were feeling a little sorry that they summoned me in the fashion like a pseudo-kidnapping. Well, it's convenient for me that this shady country gave me this much. Let's live off these funds for a while, I thought. I arrived at an honest and moderately priced inn, or shop for clothes that was recommended by those children. I came because I was still in the suit I was wearing when I was summoned, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. I bought a dully colored shirt and brown pants so that I'd match those people walking the streets. The clothes were more expensive than I expected at 7 silver coins, but I managed to get the store to buy my suit, Y shirt, and bag for 3 gold coins. So I made a net profit of 2 gold and 3 silver coins. I considered putting the writing implements, documents, smartphone, and other small accessories I had into my item box, but I didn't know how the existence of an item box would be treated in this world, so I probably shouldn't show it off so easily to others. There were cases in the novels I'd read where the item box was treated as an extremely valuable skill after all. Thankfully, the store owner threw in a cloth shoulder bag for free, so I put my stuff inside that. My shoes were probably fine as is. Before I left, I made sure to ask for a moderately priced inn nearby. He recommended an inn 3 buildings over, so I headed towards it. The inn the store owner recommended was 4 silver coins for a night's stay with meals. After dinner, I returned to my room and checked everything that needed to be checked. First up, status open. Just like they had told me at the castle, when I chanted status open, an opaque window appeared in front of me with my status on it. Apparently, only summoned heroes with the appraisal skill, although I'm not a hero, can check their statuses at any time. According to them, normally one would have to check their status using an appraisal magic tool at a town's guild branch or temple. Oh yeah, they were bragging something about how the magic item for confirming statuses was something the magic tool craftsmen of their country poured their blood, sweat, and tears into developing, weren't they? I decided to turn my thoughts to my own skills. Well, leaving that aside, they also said that around 70 is the average for people in this world, so I guess I'm just a little stronger than most people. The skills, appraisal, and item box are shared between all of the people that are summoned, so that must be something like a perk of the ritual. It seems like the item boxes of the summoned always have a high capacity, and while I was at the castle, I overheard someone saying that there was a legend of a past hero putting in over 1,000 monsters into their box. I was also told that those summoned are able to understand the world's language from the moment they arrive. That also probably falls under the perks of summoning. I mean, it's a cliche of otherworld stories after all. The biggest problem was my unique skill. Online supermarket. I know what an online supermarket is. As the type to want to hole up in his house over the weekends, I've used them a lot. I don't hate cooking, so back then I would cook from the ingredients I ordered and eat while watching the dramas I'd recorded, or else spend time drinking beer and reading all the web novels I could find. This was my routine on days off. The question is, how do I use this skill? Online supermarket. Nothing happened when I chanted the name. Then, what if I touch it? When I touched the words on my status screen, the window changed. It's literally just an online supermarket site. It was the exact same site I often used to use. For now, I put a 500ml bottle of water costing 8 iron coins and 2 sweetbreads costing 1 copper coin each into the cart. Apparently, the prices reflected their pricing in Japan. When I tried to check out though, it said, "There is not enough remaining credit. Please add more funds." A square frame appeared under the notice. So it's telling me to add funds? Do I just put the coins in here? This guy teaching budgeting for real. Oh, just you wait till we start getting into the recipes and how to cook them, because this man goes nuts. When I hesitatingly brought a silver coin close to the frame, it sucked up the coin on its own. And as soon as I finalized the purchase, silver particles of light gathered before my eyes and gradually formed into a shape. It was the cardboard box the site used when delivering orders. Once I opened the box, I found the water and sweetbread I ordered inside. Ooh, this is going to be useful. Back then, I thought, those important people working for the kingdom didn't know anything about my unique skill, other than it wasn't a skill for battle, and the heroes that were with me laughed. But this is actually a good skill that'll be quite useful. As long as I have money, I'll have no problems with food, and I can probably even earn the money I would need for that with this somehow. It's not overpowered like being a hero, but with this skill, I can probably become very rich in this world. According to the information I got from those children, salt is expensive in any country that isn't next to the ocean, and spices such as pepper or sweets are only for nobles and the like. I could use my skill to buy lots of salt, pepper, or sugar at the prices I used to buy them in at Japan, and then I could go and sell them at high prices here in this world. If I did that, it should amount to quite the profit. If I looked around carefully, there should be other products that could bring profit. Online supermarkets these days stock daily necessities as well as food, after all. You can cook right there, that's whale wife for Tio right there. That's very true, Kate. That's very true. I can cook. Anyways. Because of that, I'd like to register with the Merchants Guild, but doing so in this country would probably be a bad move. If by some chance they realize that they could make money off my skill, there would be a real possibility that the kingdom would start interfering with me. If I was going to register, I should do it in the next country over. Anyway, it all starts tomorrow. Let's hurry up and get away from this town, and then cross the border. I probably won't be able to sleep in a bed for a while after tonight, seeing how I'll be on the road. And so, I went to sleep, in order to be ready for tomorrow. You two are so silly. Also, quick question. How are you guys enjoying the first-person perspective of the book and, like, you know, me reading in a first-person perspective? Compared to, like, you know, a normal third-person story. I'm curious if it comes off as different or, I don't know. Hee. Water. After I ate breakfast, I left the inn. As I headed over to where the stagecoach would be stopped, I checked on the fee and departure time. You really like this one so far? Excellent. I'm glad for that, Mushroom. The fee seemed to be 1 gold coin, and it would take around 4 days to get to Keels. There was still time until the coach was set to depart, so in the meantime I went to prepare 4 days worth of food and a weapon, just in case something went wrong. It is a bit different, but you like both the first person. It's different? Excellent. Of course, using online supermarket in front of people would be a bad idea, and in the case that the item box is a rare skill, there could be a chance of an uproar, so I probably shouldn't use that either. I bought a water skin, jerky, black bread, as well as a slightly large knife. With this, I was ready. All that was left was to ride the stagecoach and get away from this capital. Other than me, there was a middle-aged peddler, a young married couple and their 2 children, and a woman in her mid-30s riding the stagecoach. There was also a party of 4 adventurers guarding the coach. From when we departed, I started talking a little with the peddler who was sitting next to me. Are you going to Keels to sell something? I started off with harmless small talk. Yeah, well, I managed to get some soap from a certain source, you see. I was thinking of getting a firm I know in Keels to buy it off me. Oh, soap is it? So this world has it too. Like it so far too? Ah, wonderful. Glad for that. So, after a lengthy discussion, I learned that apparently soap does exist, but it was something only nobles use. When selling to a noble, a bar of soap went for around 3 silver coins. When I tried to indirectly bring up the subject of item boxes, I learned that nobles and large trading companies would hire people with the skill. It was said that people with the item box skill are about 1 in 1,000, but it seems the size of it depends on the person's MP. So, if one didn't have at least a fairly large item box, they wouldn't be able to get hired by said nobles or companies. You like this perspective? Hooray! That's good. When I was reading through this the first time, because I read through the whole series, I did find reading through it to be very interesting, as, first person, and it's like, this is me. I am him. You're folding laundry while listening, so you type that out weird? Nah, it's fine. I got it. You're good. Ah, who doesn't love that nice, fresh laundry feel and smell? I was about to say taste, and I'm like, no, that's not right. No matter how small your item box is, it should be at least 3 times bigger than what I can carry with this wooden back rack that I have. So from my point of view, anyone with an item box is someone to be jealous of. Saying that, the peddler laughed. Yeah, the fresh linen. Yeah, you ever have that? You ever have one of those little Glade packs? You just bite right into it and you got the... just like cotton candy. Oh. With a side of dryer sheets. Oh yeah, gotta. Okay. Adds to the flavor. Texture too. So you're used to the perspective change because you read a series where every book was from a different character's perspective and such? Ah. So that means you'll be very prepared for when we read World War Z then. That's gonna be a fun one. And the dry lint. No, not the lint. Don't eat the lint. So, from my point of view, anyone with an item box is someone to be jealous of. Saying that, the peddler laughed. I see. So, the item box skill does exist among people, even if it's rare. As long as I pretend that my item box's capacity is small, it should be fine to use, I thought. The forbidden cotton candy, no! Bad core. It's forbidden for a reason. And if you have animals, it's the fur-bitten cotton candy. For real. Anyways, if I was to become a merchant, having the appraisal skill would be a great boon, wouldn't it? I was able to ask about item boxes, so I tried bringing up appraisal in the same way. You must eat it. I was also thinking about Lint. Please don't eat Lint, he's a sweet boy. Cute little raccoon. Ah, that's something every merchant dreams of. But that's something that only summoned heroes from another world who only exist in fairy tales can use. Although I do think that it's not heroes who should have the skill, but merchants. Appraisal. It's the dream of any merchant, no? Even without the appraisal skill, it would be nice if the appraisal tool becomes more widely available. People find them sometimes in ancient ruins, but they're so expensive your eyes will pop out of your head, so only countries or guilds are able to obtain them. Ooh, that was close. Yep. Insulation truly is the most forbidden cotton candy. Yep. That is correct. Please, no, the asbestos will actually kill you. Ooh, that was close. I couldn't help but sigh in relief in my head. So, appraisal is something only summoned heroes have, and magic tools with appraisal also exist. Also, Chickus, thank you for following, and welcome in. Happy New Year. I hope it's treating you well so far, and hope you enjoy your stay. But they're so expensive that it's impossible to own one privately. It seems they only rarely come out of ancient ruins, or, in other words, highly difficult dungeons. So, of course there wouldn't be a lot of them. It was good that I asked. So, now I know that there's basically no chance that I would ever get appraised. That reminds you of this photo you saw where this girl's son took a bite off the... Whoa. That's crazy. How were their teeth even that strong? Huh. While we talked about this and that, I eventually found out that the peddler was also aiming to cross the border. He leaned over to me and told me in a whisper, "This country's become pretty suspicious lately, you know. It would have been out of the question if I had a family. But luckily, I'm single, so I'm thinking of getting out of this country early. There's rumors that they might close their borders soon after all." Closing their borders, I thought. This country's dangerous as all heck. It's a good thing I gave up on this country early and decided to move. On the way to Keels, monsters like goblins and wolves appeared. As I would expect from a fantasy world of swords and magic, monsters do exist here. But the adventurers guarding us defeated them without trouble, so the ride went smoothly. When we arrived at Keels, I headed over to where the old peddler told me the stagecoach for crossing the border would be. "Hello, Jam Jam. Good to see you. How was your birthday? And Happy New Year." "It sure is, Jam Jam." "It sure is you. Good to see you." No way. At the station, a notice saying, "Stagecoach service is currently on hold," was displayed. What do you mean, on hold? Is this what the peddler meant by closing their borders? But if that's really the case, would the town really be this calm? It was good, you got a cookie cake. Yeah, that is awesome. At any rate, I needed more information. I headed over to a restaurant where a lot of adventurers that have probably been to many different countries gathered, so I could fill my stomach while I was at it. I took a seat at the bar and called out to a group of 2 adventurers who just happened to be sitting next to me. "Hey, you guys have a moment?" "Sure, what do you need?" "I've actually just arrived here a little while ago, so there's a few things I'd like to know." I promptly waved for the barkeep down and bought the 2 some ale. When I did that, the adventurers happily said, "Ha ha, you know your stuff," and promptly started talking. "I see, so stopping the stagecoach is in order to help stop the flow of people leaving." "Yeah, if the population decreases, so does the number of soldiers and the amount of taxes. Right now it's just the stagecoaches, but they might really shut down the border eventually. Even though this country is already warring with the demon folk, it seems they're planning on starting a war with the kingdom of Marvale, too." Right. It's only a matter of time before war breaks out. It might have been because they had some liquor in them, but the 2 adventurers were very talkative. The country of demon folk borders this country's northern end, while the kingdom of Marvale is in the west. My plan was to head to the kingdom of Inen, to the southeast. We're also planning on saying goodbye to this country soon. Hunting monsters suits us more than fighting in a war, you know. You should leave as soon as you can, too. I'd have left this country already if I could have, but if a monster appeared on the road, there would be nothing someone like me, who was just a little stronger than average, could do about it. It seemed to be a significant problem, but as I looked at the adventurers, it came to me. Why don't I just make a request to the Adventurers Guild? It'll probably cost quite a bit of money, but there's no point in being stingy here. My first priority is to leave this country before they close their borders for good. I decided to put out a request to the Adventurers Guild to guard me while I crossed the border. The next morning, well then, let's go put up the request at the Adventurers Guild. I'll have a little cookie emote. The guild was facing the main street, and I found it immediately. But it was early in the morning, so the building was jam-packed. In a rather cliched development, I was stared at by the adventurers when I entered, but I tried to ignore them. I'm just here to post a request, I swear. If they realize I'm a client for my conversation with the clerk, nobody should mess with me. Probably. After I stood in line for a while, it was finally my turn. Excuse me, I'd like to make a request. A request is it, sir? What are you asking for, sir? I'd like to hire guards while I cross the border into Venen. Also, I don't have a carriage, so the journey will be on foot. This is my first time putting out a request. How much should I pay for a job like this? An escort mission on foot, yes? For that kind of request, you'll need at least a C-rank party or above, and on top of that, it'll be on foot, so it'll take quite a while. At the very least, you should probably offer 7 gold coins. While I was thinking to myself that 7 gold coins would hurt my wallet quite a bit, the receptionist started talking again. However, because the stagecoaches are stopped, we've been getting more of this kind of request. Taking that into account, a reward of 8 gold coins might be more appropriate. I see. Because if the number of the same kind of quest increases, adventurers will bite at the one that pays more. But 8 gold coins? It honestly hurt me to pay that much, but you need to break some eggs to make an omelet. There was really no choice. Understood. I'll pay 8 gold coins. Also, could you let them know I'll handle the food? From the receptionist's choice of words, it sounded like 8 gold coins might have been a tough sell, so I tried adding food onto the table. I don't hate cooking, and I did have that skill, so as long as I were to choose cheaper ingredients, I should be fine. Alright then, I'm in your care. Leaving reward money at the desk, I left the Adventurers Guild. Next day, I got called to the Adventurers Guild. When I arrived, I was surprised to find that my request had already been accepted. I didn't expect to have it accepted this fast, but I wanted to leave as soon as possible, so I was actually grateful. At the guild, I was introduced to the C-rank party, Iron Will. I'm the leader of Iron Will, Werner. Pleased to meet you. My name's Makoda, and the pleasure's all mine. It seems only nobles get family names, so in order to avoid suspicion, I only gave them my last name, and also made sure to pronounce it in a foreign way. Werner was a densely packed, 190-centimeter tall man in his early 30s. What is that in American? Oh, damn. They're 6.2 feet. In inches and feet. Yep, nope. That's like 6'3". In his early 30s, he had a large shield on his back, and a sword hanging from his hip. His thick arms carried many old scars, so he really felt like a seasoned adventurer. From Werner's introduction, the members of his party were a man wearing leather armor with a long sword on his hip named Vincent, who I thought was a swordsman, a young girl who was probably a scout named Rita, who wore a chest protector and carried a knife, a stoic old man with white in his hair named Ramon, who donned a robe like a mage, and a woman named Franca in her early 20s who was probably their healer, as she wore white clothes that reminded me of a nun's habit. By the way, she had a huge chest. Thanks, book, for telling us. You're glad you're not the only one who has to look it up. Oh, I'm not doing maths or conversions today. I'm reading books. You still want my Jack Jack? Well, I'm sorry, Jam Jam. He has to stay with me. But you are free to visit and give him pets any time. You can't take him with you, though. The guards won't let you. It seemed to be a pretty balanced party. I didn't think the guild would introduce me to people who they didn't think would be able to complete the request, so I decided to hire them. Maths is gross? I agree. Unless we're talking about the math of economics. Because let's face it, making money, that's great. Reciteer has ruined my life forever. Capitalism ho. I'll be playing that on stream. After I talked with Werner, we decided to leave tomorrow at 7 in the morning, after meeting up in front of the Adventurers Guild. If that was to be the case, I would have a lot to prepare, as I would be the one preparing all the food for the trip. On the way back to the inn, I bought the things I'd need for the trip. First was a mantle. It could stave off the cold, and when sleeping, I could just wrap it around me, so it seemed pretty necessary. That you're a samurai I can win. I don't know why you want to beat up the guards who are my parents. That's kinda weird and mean, Jam Jam. I also bought all the cutlery and plates I needed at the general store. While I was doing that, I also found a lot of other stuff that seemed useful, like a magic stove. Just like the name implied, it was a stove that produced fire when one ran magic power through it. They came with either 1 or 2 stovetops, but both models were expensive. Just then, I suddenly thought, why not just buy a mini stove from the online supermarket? It looked exactly the same, so if I were to tell the adventurers it was a magic stove, there wouldn't be anything suspicious about it. This is why you hate her human services major, you hate numbers. Valid. It's good to go down a different route to avoid the numbers. Well, you'll win over one of them with cookies and cakes. Okay, let's do that. Buying a mini stove from the online supermarket is way cheaper too. With that decided, all that was left was to actually buy what I needed with my skill. So I hurried to return to the inn. After I got to my room, I proceeded to buy up a storm. A mini stove with the accompanying gas canister, a pot and frying pan, knife, chopping board, and all the important ingredients. I was buying for a party of 5 adventurers plus me, so I made sure to get a lot. I got vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and Japanese scallion, along with cheese, ham, sausage, and eggs. I also bought some pre-prepared side dishes. Lastly, I got some salt, bouillon cubes, and other spices. All in all, I spent a little over 2 gold coins. I was down to 8 gold coins, 5 silver coins, and a few copper and iron coins each to my name. My wallet's getting tighter and tighter, I considered, but it'll only be until I reach Venen. Once I get there, I'll register at the Merchants Guild and sell my heart out, and after securing funds, I'll move again once I've seen the state of things. Let's work hard for my safe and peaceful life. Is this a novel and webtoon as well? Let me check that actually. Campfire cooking. Let's see. So it has a manga adaptation with a spin-off manga. It started out as a web serial novel released on Shosetsuka ni Naro in January 2016. Then it got a manga adaptation, and then it got its 12 anime adaptations so far. It's a lot of fun. I like it a lot. Let's see. Oh, we're almost done. There we go. Yep, it's not enough. Let me tell you that right now. It's not enough. Oh, we did get a second season announced, so I cannot wait for that to actually come out. In fact, after this, kind of want to make a webtoon or webcomic because you don't like the webtoon setup? That's fair. I remember I used to draw comics back in the day. The good animes never have enough? Completely correct. But yeah, after this, I think I'll stream the first episode for you guys in the Discord, so that'll be a good way to just go over what I just read and enjoy a new show. I'm gonna get you all hooked. When I arrived in front of the Adventurers Guild at the agreed upon time, I found the members of Iron and Will already waiting for me. Sorry I'm late. No, we've just arrived early. Don't worry about it, said the leader, Werner, laughing. Apparently, they drilled the habit of doing this quickly into their bodies. That's a good habit to have, I thought. Okay then, let's go, I nodded, and set off on the road to Venan. Sorry, I'm having fun. Leaving the town of Keels, we made smooth progress. Iron Will's formation had no holes. I was in the center, with Rita the Scout in front, Vincent the Swordsman to my right, Ramon the Mage to my left, Franco the Healer behind me and to the right, and Werner behind me and to the left. They were set up to protect me, the client, at any time. A silly little dude I be? You have no idea. Just wait until I unveil a huge, huge secret. I'll probably do that eventually. We should take a break soon. At Werner's suggestion, we decided to rest. As promised, I started to prepare food. That said, there wasn't much time, so it was going to be a simple meal. I took the mini stove that I bought earlier out of my item box. More lore, more lore. Now you must know, soon, soon. Very, very soon. Oh? So, you were an item box user, Mukoda. And that's a magic stove. You've got something pretty neat there. In response to Vincent's comment, I nodded, explaining, my capacity's pretty small, though. I did hear that item box users existed, so I decided to make it out that I have an item box, but that it's small. That way it would be more convenient to hold my stuff, which has been increasing. And this way, it should probably also be better than going to weird lengths to hide it. I got the magic stove from an acquaintance. He said he probably wouldn't have any chance to use it anymore, so I got it for pretty cheap. I readily used the excuse I prepared beforehand for my mini stove. The ends justifies the means applies here. While I talked with Vincent, I brought out a loaf of bread and some ham and cheese to make sandwiches. I also made some instant consomme soup in wooden cups. Of course, I made sure they couldn't see while I made it. After I poured in water that I boiled with the mini stove into the cups, lunch was finished. Everyone, food's ready. I handed out a cup with soup in it and a plate with a sandwich on it to each adventurer. All right, I guess I should dig in. At Werner's signal, everyone began eating. Delicious! This bread is very soft and delicious. Yeah, this bread is crazy soft and tasty. The soup's good too. Oh, this is pretty good. Delicious. Those reactions in order were Vincent, Franca, Rita, Werner, and Ramon. It's good that they liked it. I cut so many corners making this, though. They were especially surprised about the bread. Apparently, only nobles got bread this soft. Certainly all the bread I've eaten up till now in this world has been black or brown and hard as a rock. In order to avoid further questions, I told them, this bread is made from a secret recipe from my home. I bought a bunch before I left and put them in my item box. Everyone froze up and somebody uttered, something so precious. But I just replied to that by telling them, food is meant to be eaten. I mean, I can get more bread any time with my skill. At any rate, it's really good that we can get hot food while traveling, Werner said, and everyone else nodded in agreement. Too true. We were right to take this quest. Evidently, while traveling, it would be normal to have rather tasteless foods like hardtack or jerky, so the food I put out is quite the feast to people who are going places. It seems that good food breaks the ice anywhere, as conversation flowed freely. True. Apparently, the members of Iron Will had felt the unrest in the country too, so they had recently discussed moving to a different country as well. It was then that they saw my request and thought it was perfect timing, so they accepted it. Actually, there were other requests that paid more, but they didn't really need money that badly at the moment, and since I promised to provide the food during travel, they ended up taking mine. It seems that food fees for 5 people is no joke, I noted. No, I'm the one that's thankful for you guys for taking my request. I also came to Kiel's because I wanted to get out as soon as possible, but seeing that the stagecoaches were stopped, for a while I was panicking, wondering what I should do. So it's thanks to all of you that I'm able to travel to Venen. Even though I look like this, I'm pretty confident in my cooking, so leave the meals to me. After I said that, everyone smiled. They had good food to look forward to for the rest of the journey after all. I'll try my best, so please get me to Venen safely. And that's the end of Chapter 1. What's my favorite thing to cook? Japanese-style curry. Beef. I love having my beef curry. Nothing too spicy, but plenty of flavor. I'm still trying to learn how to get chicken katsu down, though. That one's tough. But as soon as I can combine both together, I will be unstoppable. I also love preparing carne asada. I make some darn good breakfasts using some nice potatoes and eggs and some nice sausage. You love making chicken katsu? Nice. Well, if we ever meet, curry will happen, because I love curry, and making it's a lot of fun too. Alright everyone, I think we've had a nice and fruitful stream today. Not only did we read a particularly long chapter of the Pawn of Prophecy, but we did start campfire cooking as well. I'd like to think this is a pretty good way to start the year if you don't mind me saying. So everyone, I hope you all can rest easy. And for those of you that will be joining me in the Discord to watch the first episode, I'll see you there too. Before I go though, what is it that you're looking forward to the most out of this year? There isn't a lot of reasons to be positive right now currently, but I'm looking for any sort of positivity in the meantime. Me, I'm excited to go back to voice acting workshops again. That will be in 2 weeks. What day is that? The 13th. So probably won't be here to stream on that Monday. But that is a while to go, so you'll have me since then. Halloween? Don't joke about that, Kate. That one's a real thing to be excited about. I love Halloween. We'll be going nuts for that, by the way. Spooky stories, horror games, VR experiences. Oh, we are going to do so much once October rolls around. You're looking forward to hopefully being a vendor this year at a convention? That's awesome! Getting out of your comfort zone? Makes sense. I do love going to the artist alley and the dealer halls of any sort of convention. It's always the most fun. I also just find it really funny because I'll just be walking around minding my business and then people will just start talking to me, like especially the vendors. And I'm like, oh, hi. Hello. Yeah, con's going great. You live in Artist Alley? I usually do. Although the last time I went to a convention, it was very, very different as I keep telling the story. That was probably the most educational con experience too. It was nice. Yeah, we love spoopy season. I wonder if I can get a new model by then. Do I cosplay? I have not for many years, but I would like to. One of my goals for this year is to get back into a nice good shape so I can cosplay better. Obviously, you don't have to be in shape to cosplay. You can do whatever you want, but I want to do justice to the character for myself. And I have some plans for this year, too. I've never been to a convention? They're a lot of fun, but they can be very chaotic and lots of energy involved in them. Nice. You need to cosplay? It's a lot of fun. And it just brings you more into the spirit of things. My favorite thing about conventions is just how excited and happy everyone is to be there. Obviously, it's not everybody, but usually I'm very, very lucky when it comes to the people that I meet. You've been exercising every day since last week and hopefully you stick to it? I have to start tomorrow. We have too many sweets and goodies around for me to not enjoy. But after that, I have to go hard. No more. Everything hurts, but you feel a lot better. That's how it should be. And, you know, I'm proud of you. It's hard to start and even hard to stick to it, but I believe in you, Mushroom. You've got this. I believe in you that you'll be able to make it to the goals that you've got set for you. Everyone wants to lose weight, but you want to gain weight. It's kind of hard to, not gonna lie. That also depends on the body type too. Especially if you're like a stick. Then it is hard to gain weight. But I hope everyone hits those shapely and weight goals that everyone's looking forward to this year. And actually sticks to it. This was the motivation you needed? Glad to do my job. Well, everyone, that was nice. But I'll go ahead and end it here. Have a good night, everyone. See you in the Discord. And Happy New Year. Here's to another great year together with everyone. Bye.